My husband reported me missing, and cried on the news, begging for me to return. But when I showed up at the police station alive, his reaction told me everything I needed to know. I stepped through the heavy glass doors of the police station, my fingers trembling as I gripped the handle. The moment felt surreal, like I was walking into a life that no longer belonged to me. My body ached, my clothes clung to my skin with the weight of dried sweat and exhaustion, but none of that compared to the storm raging inside my chest. The receptionist barely looked up from her computer screen. "Can I help you?" My voice came out cracked, barely above a whisper. I think I was reported missing." That got her attention. Her fingers paused over the keyboard, her eyes flickering up to my face. A moment of silence stretched between us before she carefully asked, "Your name?" I swallowed hard. My throat burned. "Sarah Lawson." Her face changed instantly. The hesitation, the widening of her eyes, she knew. The name meant something to her. 1 second. That's all it took before the room around me erupted into chaos. Officers appeared from every direction, voices overlapping, radios crackling. Someone muttered something about a detective. A young officer with a notepad kept staring at me like I was a ghost. And then I heard it. A television screen mounted on the far wall played the local news. The volume was low, but the captions told me everything I needed to know. Heartbroken husband's desperate plea, "Please, Sarah, if you're out there, come home." I turned just in time to see the footage. My husband, Ethan, sat at a press conference table, eyes swollen, face buried in his hands. A microphone was shoved in front of him. He lifted his head slowly, blinking away fake tears, his voice shaking as he spoke. "She was my world," he choked out, barely able to get the words past his lips. "I don't know how to live without her. If anyone has seen my wife, please help bring her back to me." The cameras zoomed in, capturing the depth of his pain. His hands trembled. His breath hitched. He was every bit the devastated husband, a man clinging to hope. I felt sick. Every single word was a lie. An officer gently guided me toward a chair. "We've been looking for you for weeks," he said. "Are you hurt? Do you remember what happened?" I barely heard him. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. Ethan. My husband. The man who had supposedly spent every waking moment searching for me. Right now he was sitting in front of a room full of reporters, weeping for the cameras, pleading for my return. And in the very next breath he was cracking a joke with the officer beside him. Something dark curled in my stomach. His face had shifted so fast. The raw pain vanished in a blink, his lips twitching up in an easy grin. It was subtle, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't watching him closely. But I saw it, because I knew him. I had been married to him for nearly 6 years. I had memorized every expression, every tick, every quirk of his face. And that wasn't grief. That was relief. The kind of relief you feel when a problem has disappeared. The kind of relief that says it worked. My blood turned to ice. Before I could say a word, the station doors swung open and suddenly there he was. Ethan. He was breathing hard, his navy blue shirt slightly wrinkled, like he had rushed here in a panic. His wide blue-gray eyes found me instantly, his jaw falling slack. The room went still. The officers around us seemed to hold their breath, waiting for a dramatic reunion. A weeping husband and his lost wife, finally back together. But that's not what happened. Ethan didn't run to me. He didn't even take a step forward. He just stood there, frozen. I stared back at him, my pulse hammering in my ears. My entire body begged me to speak, to say something, anything. But the words caught in my throat. And then I saw it. The moment his expression changed. It was quick. A flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. A second of absolute panic before he forced his face into something softer. "Sarah." His voice cracked. "Oh my God." He moved forward then, slow and hesitant, like he was stepping toward a stranger. I braced myself for the hug. For the performance he was about to put on in front of all these people. Sure enough, his arms wrapped around me, squeezing too tightly, too desperately. His breath was warm against my ear, but his words chilled me to the bone. "Why did you come back?" I stiffened. He pulled away before I could react, his hands shaking as he cupped my face. "I thought I lost you," he whispered, loud enough for the officers to hear. His thumb brushed my cheek, his eyes glistening with false tears. But I saw the truth underneath it all. He wasn't happy. He was terrified. My stomach knotted. None of this made sense. Why would my own husband be afraid of me being alive? Plus, I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way my entire body suddenly felt like it didn't belong to me. The officers around us gave us space, murmuring about next steps. Someone handed me a bottle of water. Another officer offered to call a doctor. Ethan, meanwhile, kept his hands on my arms, grounding me in place. I felt like a chess piece being moved into position. Slowly, I lifted my gaze to meet his. "Why did you come back?" The words replayed over and over in my head, each time unraveling something deeper. A horrible, gnawing feeling settled in my chest. I needed to find out what had really happened. And I needed to do it fast. Because for the first time in my life I was looking at my husband, and I wasn't sure if I had ever really known him at all. Ethan's grip on my arms was firm, his fingers pressing into my skin like he was holding on for dear life. But his eyes, those familiar, once loving eyes, told a different story. He wasn't relieved. He wasn't overjoyed. He was terrified. The police officers still hovered nearby, their voices blending into a low murmur. Some were discussing next steps, others whispering about the miracle of my return. But all I could focus on was the man in front of me, the husband who had supposedly spent weeks searching for me, only to look like he'd seen a ghost the moment I walked through those doors. "Why did you come back?" His whispered words still rang in my ears. I forced myself to swallow the rising nausea, forcing my lips into something that resembled a weak smile. I don't remember much," I said, my voice shaky, hesitant. I don't know how I got here." Ethan exhaled sharply, a flicker of something unreadable flashing across his face. His grip loosened slightly. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice just loud enough for the officers to hear. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." The warmth in his voice was meant to be comforting. But I felt none of it. Something was very, very wrong. A detective stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mrs. Lawson will need to ask you a few questions," he said gently, "just to understand what happened." I nodded, but before I could answer, Ethan stepped in. "She's exhausted," he cut in quickly, his arm wrapping around my waist in a possessive grip. "Can we take her home first? She's been through enough." The detective hesitated, his eyes flickering to me. "Mrs. Lawson?" My mouth felt dry. The weight of Ethan's arm on my waist, the pressure of his body so close to mine. It felt suffocating. Like a silent warning. I swallowed hard. I think I need some rest," I managed to say. Ethan's grip tightened slightly, but I ignored it. The detective nodded, though I didn't miss the way his eyes lingered on me, as if something about this didn't sit right with him either. "All right," he said. "But we'll need to schedule a follow-up soon." Ethan nodded quickly, too quickly. "Of course." Before I could blink, I was being led out of the station, cameras flashing as reporters swarmed toward us. I flinched, my body tensing, but Ethan's grip only grew stronger, guiding me through the chaos like a lifeline. Like he was making sure I didn't run. As we approached his car, he finally leaned in, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "We'll talk when we get home." I froze, my blood running cold. That wasn't concern. That was a warning. The car ride was silent, the only sound coming from the occasional hum of the engine and the distant echo of traffic outside. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles pale. I sat stiffly in the passenger seat, my fingers digging into my thighs. The city lights blurred past us, but I barely saw them. My mind was racing, my thoughts a tangled mess of confusion and growing dread. Where had I been for the past few weeks? Why couldn't I remember anything? And why did my own husband act like my return was the worst thing that could have happened? I turned my head slightly, watching him out of the corner of my eye. His jaw was clenched, his lips pressed into a thin line. This wasn't the Ethan I had married. Or maybe I had never really known him at all. We pulled into the driveway of our home. Our home. But as I stared at the house, something inside me twisted. The porch light was on, casting a warm glow over the entrance. The lawn was neatly trimmed, the flower beds well maintained. From the outside, everything looked the same. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew. Everything had changed. The scent hit me first. It wasn't mine. The air was thick with a perfume I didn't recognize. Floral, almost sickly sweet. I froze in the doorway, my fingers clenching around the strap of my bag. The furniture was the same. The walls were the same. But the small details, the things that made this my home, were gone. The throw blanket I always left on the couch? Nowhere in sight. My favorite coffee mug? Replaced. The framed wedding photo that used to sit on the entryway table? Vanished. Instead, a different picture sat there. A newer one. Thin. And another woman. I barely processed the sharp intake of breath that escaped my lips. My heart pounded as I stepped closer, my eyes scanning the image. She was young, pretty, blonde, and she was laughing, her arm looped around Ethan's like she belonged there. Like she lived there. My stomach twisted violently. Ethan stepped in behind me, his presence looming like a shadow. "You must be tired," he said, his voice unreadable. "Why don't you go rest?" I turned slowly, my breath shallow. "Who is she?" His expression didn't change. "She's no one. No one." A stranger had been in my home, wearing my life like a costume. And my husband, my loving husband, had moved on like I was already dead. I swallowed, my throat dry. "How long has she been staying here?" Ethan exhaled through his nose, his jaw tightening. "Sarah." "How long?" I demanded, my voice sharper now. His eyes darkened. "A few weeks. A few weeks." The exact amount of time I had been missing. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just grief. This wasn't just moving on. This was planned. Ethan sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "Look, I didn't think you were coming back, all right?" His voice was softer now, almost pleading. "I was mourning. I was lonely. And I needed someone." The words sliced through me like a blade. I needed someone. Not I missed you. Not I was searching for you. Just I needed someone. My fingers curled into fists. My mind was spinning, my chest tightening with something raw and ugly. He never thought I'd return. He never wanted me to. And now, as I stood in what used to be my home, staring at a life I no longer recognized, one thought burned in my mind. I wasn't just a missing person. I was a problem Ethan had already solved. And now I had come back to ruin everything. The weight of Ethan's words settled over me like a heavy fog. "I didn't think you were coming back." There was the truth, so casually spoken, like an afterthought. He had already rewritten his life, already replaced me. He had let the world believe I was gone, because in his mind I was. I tore my gaze away from the framed picture, my pulse hammering against my ribs. My fingers curled into fists at my sides, nails biting into my palms. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, Sarah, I know this is a lot." I stepped back. Just enough to put distance between us. Just enough to breathe. "You told them I was missing." My voice felt foreign to my own ears. "You went on TV. You cried for me." His eyes flickered, just for a second, before he forced a solemn nod. "Because I thought you were gone." I watched him closely, my mind racing. "And you never got any messages from me? No calls? No signs that I was alive?" Another hesitation. A flicker of something in his expression too fast to catch. Then a slow, measured shake of his head. "No. Liar." I inhaled deeply, forcing the air into my lungs, steadying my thoughts. I needed to think, to be careful. Because something wasn't adding up. Ethan wasn't just shocked to see me alive. He was rattled. Panicked. And then it clicked. If I had truly been missing, if I had disappeared without warning, how had he moved on so quickly? How had he known I wasn't coming back? Plus, I swallowed hard. "How did I disappear, Ethan?" My voice was softer now, deliberate. "What did you tell them happened to me?" He hesitated again. I told them I didn't know." A safe answer. Too safe. I took a step forward, forcing him to meet my gaze. "Then why does it feel like you were ready for it?" His jaw clenched. "Sarah, why does it feel like you needed me to disappear?" The words landed between us like a slap. His lips parted, but nothing came out. I saw it again, that flicker of panic beneath his carefully constructed mask. He hadn't prepared for this. He hadn't planned for me to stand here demanding answers. And then he recovered. A slow exhale, a forced chuckle. "You're being paranoid." Paranoid. A familiar word. One he had used before, during arguments, when I had called him out on his lies. When I had pointed out inconsistencies in his stories. I felt my stomach turn. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again. I stepped past him, walking deeper into the house, past the scent of her perfume, past the remnants of a life I no longer recognized. My feet carried me toward the bedroom, my body moving on instinct. Something told me the truth was hidden there. Ethan followed. Sarah, wait. I didn't stop. The moment I pushed open the bedroom door, my breath hitched. Everything. Gone. My clothes. My books. My jewelry. Every single trace of me had been erased. In its place, her things. Her dresses hanging neatly in the closet. Her shoes tucked carefully under the bed. I turned slowly, my throat burning. How long did it take? My voice was eerily calm. How long before you started replacing me? Ethan exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. Sarah, listen. Did you ever love me? His head snapped up, his expression darkening. Of course I did. Then why does it feel like I was never here? Silence. For the first time he had no answer. And that's when I knew. He had planned this. This wasn't grief. This wasn't moving on. This was deliberate. I turned toward the nightstand, my fingers curling around the drawer handle. Before Ethan could stop me, I yanked it open. Papers. Dozens of them. My eyes darted over the documents. Bank statements, insurance policies, legal forms. And then I saw it. My death certificate. I froze. My vision blurred. Sarah. I held up a hand, silencing him. My pulse roared in my ears. Date of death. 2 weeks ago. Cause unknown. My breath shuddered. You declared me dead? Ethan's expression twisted into something unreadable. You knew I was alive, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a freight train. And you wanted me gone. For the first time his mask cracked completely. He didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Instead his shoulders slumped and something in his eyes shifted. From panic to something colder. Sharper. Sarah. His voice was dangerously soft. I need you to listen to me. I shook my head, stepping back, my heart hammering. You tried to erase me. I needed to, he snapped. You were ruining everything. His words hit me harder than any slap ever could. Ruining. That's what I had been to him. A problem. A mistake. A piece of his life he had decided to erase. I forced myself to breathe, my hands trembling. The insurance. The house. The other woman. He had planned it all. And now I had come back and destroyed his perfect alibi. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I thought you were gone. It was easier this way. Easier. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. For you, maybe. He took a step closer. You need to understand, Sarah. I backed away. I understand perfectly. My voice was barely above a whisper. You wanted me dead. Another silence. He didn't deny it. And that was all the confirmation I needed. Something inside me shifted. This wasn't shock anymore. This wasn't fear. This was rage. Cold, steady, and unstoppable. Ethan had spent weeks crafting his perfect lie, weaving a story that would make him look like the grieving husband while erasing me from existence. But the one thing he never expected? I had survived. And now I was going to make sure he didn't get away with it. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, staring at the man who once vowed to love me, realizing for the first time that every word had been a lie. Ethan didn't see me as a wife. He saw me as a problem. And now he was looking at me like a problem that had come back to haunt him. The weight of that realization settled deep in my bones. My body felt disconnected from my mind, as if I were floating outside of myself, watching this horror unfold. I had spent weeks lost in the dark, struggling to remember what had happened to me. But now, standing in the home that no longer felt like mine, I understood the truth. Ethan had erased me. And someone else had stepped into my place. I turned, scanning the room, my pulse hammering. Her scent lingered in the air, that sickly sweet perfume clinging to the fabric of the curtains, the pillows, the sheets. The closet doors were slightly open, revealing silk blouses and dresses in colors I never would have chosen. A pair of heels rested by the bed, delicate, feminine, too small to be mine. The rage inside me boiled higher. Who is she? My voice came out quieter than I expected, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath it. Ethan sighed, rubbing a hand over his jaw. Sarah. Who is she? I repeated, sharper this time. His expression darkened, irritation flickering in his eyes. It doesn't matter. The response sent a fresh wave of fury crashing through me. I stepped closer, shoving the death certificate into his chest. Does she know about this? My voice trembled, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was something colder, something steady. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. That was all I needed to know. A bitter laugh bubbled in my throat. You've got to be kidding me. I gestured around the room, my hands shaking. You moved on this fast? You replaced me like I was, what? A pet? A piece of furniture. His nostrils flared, his body tensing like he was holding something back. You were gone, Sarah. I shook my head. I was missing. And you didn't even wait long enough to pretend you cared. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. What did you expect me to do? Sit around mourning forever? I expected you to at least act like my life mattered to you. The words hit like a slap. A heavy silence stretched between us, thick with everything we weren't saying. Ethan was the first to break it. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. I didn't plan for this, he muttered, more to himself than to me. I thought. His voice cut off. I narrowed my eyes. You thought what? He hesitated. I took a step closer. You thought I was dead, didn't you? Ethan's lips parted, but nothing came out. He had no excuse. No way to talk himself out of this. I let out a slow breath, my mind spinning. If he had truly believed I was dead, then that meant one thing. The other woman, the woman who had stepped into my life, thought so too. A sick, twisted part of me wondered how much she knew. Had she moved in under the pretense that Ethan was grieving? Or had she been there all along waiting for me to disappear? I needed to find out. I turned on my heel, heading for the bedroom door. Where are you going? Ethan asked, alarm sparking in his voice. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I grabbed my coat from the hallway hook, my fingers numb as I shoved my arms through the sleeves. Ethan followed, his footsteps heavy behind me. Sarah, stop. I ignored him, throwing open the front door. The cool night air hit my face, but it barely registered. My mind was too focused, too set on one thing. I needed to see her. I needed to look into the eyes of the woman who had taken my place. Ethan caught my wrist before I could step outside. Sarah, please. Let it go. Let it go? I stared at him, my pulse thundering. You declared me dead, I said, my voice eerily calm. You built a life without me. You lied to everyone. I shook my head. I'm not letting anything go. His grip tightened. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I yanked my arm free, stepping out onto the porch. You never loved me, Ethan. You loved the idea of me. And the second I became inconvenient, you replaced me. He didn't deny it. Instead, his shoulders sagged, and for the first time I saw it. Not regret. Not guilt. Relief. He had gotten away with it. He'll know. I turned away from him and started walking. I didn't know exactly where she lived, but it wasn't hard to figure out. The moment I scrolled through Ethan's social media, I found her. Her name was Olivia. She had dark blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a perfect, glowing smile. The kind of woman who looked effortlessly beautiful, polished. Like the type of person Ethan wanted people to believe he deserved. And then I found the address. It was a townhouse on the other side of the city. Cozy, expensive. The kind of place you bought when you were starting a new chapter. I didn't think. I just drove. 20 minutes later, I was standing in front of her door, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. My heart pounded, but I ignored it. I had come this far. I wasn't turning back now. I knocked once. Then again. A few seconds later, the door opened. Olivia stood there, her expression shifting from polite curiosity to confusion. Can I help you? I stared at her, my pulse hammering. She looked exactly like her pictures. Perfect, effortless, radiant. And completely clueless. She had no idea who I was. No idea that the man she was with had built their relationship on a lie. No idea that the woman she thought was dead was standing right in front of her. I took a slow breath. I think we need to talk. Her brows furrowed. Do I know you? I exhaled, steadying myself. Then I hit her with the truth. I'm Sarah Lawson. I watched her closely, waiting for it to register. She blinked. What? Her face went pale. She knew the name. She knew exactly who I was. And that's when I realized. She wasn't just some innocent bystander. She had known all along. Olivia's face drained of color. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I watched the realization settle into her eyes. The unmistakable flicker of panic. The the sharp inhale of breath as she took a half step back. She knew exactly who I was. For a brief second I saw the war inside her. The struggle between pretending she had no clue and admitting the truth. But I didn't give her a chance to choose. You knew, I said quietly, stepping forward, my voice eerily calm. Didn't you? Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Don't lie to me. My voice was sharper now, cutting through the cold night air between us. You knew I was alive, Olivia. She exhaled shakily, glancing over her shoulder as if searching for an escape. When she looked back at me, something else flickered in her expression. Guilt. I didn't know at first, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I swear I didn't. A hollow laugh escaped my lips. At first. I repeated. So at some point you did know. She looked away. Ethan told me you were gone, she said after a long pause. That you'd disappeared without a trace. I could hear the tremble in her voice, but I wasn't interested in her excuses. Did you ever question it? I asked, my eyes narrowing. Did you ever stop to wonder why a wife would just vanish? She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the edge of the door. Or were you too busy playing house in my bed? The words struck like a slap and Olivia flinched. I didn't, she shook her head. It wasn't like that. I took another step forward, forcing her to look at me. Then what was it like? I asked, my voice sharp. Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like you replaced me before my body was even cold. She inhaled sharply, her gaze darting around as if looking for a way out. Did he tell you about the life insurance? I continued, my voice dropping lower. Did he mention the money he was about to collect? The death certificate he had printed? Her breath hitched. I caught it. That tiny, almost imperceptible reaction. He knew. She had known for a while. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I kept my expression unreadable. I needed her to talk. I needed her to confess. How long? I asked, my tone steady. How long before you realized I wasn't just missing? She squeezed her eyes shut. For a moment I thought she wouldn't answer. Then her shoulders sagged. 2 weeks, she admitted, barely audible. I sucked in a sharp breath. 2 weeks. 14 days of pretending. Of sleeping in my house, sitting at my dinner table, wrapping herself around my husband while knowing that I was supposed to be dead. My hands curled into fists at my sides. And you stayed. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. She had chosen silence. She had chosen him. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. I wasn't a part of this. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You weren't a part of it, I repeated bitterly. You just benefited from it. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for the first time, I saw something shift in her expression. A flicker of something raw. Shame. I tried to leave, she murmured. I told him I didn't want any part of it, but she hesitated, then shook her head. He made it clear that leaving wasn't an option. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? She hesitated. Ethan isn't who you think he is. I let out a sharp breath. Oh, believe me, Olivia, I know exactly who he is. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. Then you know what he's capable of. A strange tension settled between us, thick and suffocating. The realization struck me all at once. She wasn't just afraid of me. She was afraid of him. I took a slow step back, my mind racing. How deep does this go? I asked, my voice quieter now. She hesitated again, but I caught it. The way she clenched her fingers around the fabric of her sweater, the nervous dart of her eyes toward the street, as if someone could be watching. Ethan, her voice trailed off and she swallowed hard. He's not just lying to you. A chill crawled up my spine. What does that mean? She looked at me then, truly looked at me, and for the first time since she had opened the door she seemed to understand. I wasn't the enemy. We were both trapped in the same nightmare. A long silence stretched between us before she finally whispered, I think you were never supposed to come back. The words landed like a punch to the gut. I opened my mouth but no sound came out. For weeks I had felt it in my bones, that something was missing, that something wasn't right. I had assumed Ethan had wanted me gone for his own selfish reasons. But Olivia's expression told me there was more. Much more. Something darker. Something I wasn't prepared for. I forced myself to breathe, my mind racing. What are you saying? She exhaled shakily. I think Ethan wasn't just covering up your disappearance. She met my gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. I think he planned it. A cold, creeping dread settled into my bones. This wasn't just a betrayal. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something else entirely. A slow, methodical, premeditated plan to erase me. My heart pounded, my skin prickling with cold sweat. Everything I thought I knew about Ethan, about what had happened to me, shifted. I had assumed I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That maybe I had gotten lost. That maybe there was some explanation for the missing pieces in my mind. But what if there wasn't? What if my disappearance wasn't an accident? What if Ethan had made it happen? The thought nearly knocked the air from my lungs. Olivia stepped forward, lowering her voice. He's dangerous, Sarah. I swallowed hard, my pulse roaring in my ears. I need to know everything. Her lips parted as if she was about to say something. And then suddenly her eyes flicked past me. Her breath hitched. A slow, creeping terror spread across her face. And before I could turn around, I knew. We weren't alone. Olivia's face went pale, her eyes frozen on something behind me. I didn't turn around right away. My instincts screamed at me to move, to react, to run, but I forced myself to stay still. My fingers curled at my sides, nails digging into my palms, steadying myself. I needed control. Slowly, carefully I turned my head. Ethan stood at the end of the driveway, hands in the pockets of his jacket, watching us. The streetlight above him cast long, eerie shadows across his face, making his expression unreadable. But I didn't need to see it clearly to know. He wasn't here to talk. A chill ran through me. My body screamed to step back, but I held my ground, forcing my face into something unreadable. If he was expecting fear, I wouldn't give it to him. Ladies, Ethan said smoothly, his voice deceptively calm. Didn't expect to see you two getting so close. Olivia's breath hitched beside me. I felt her inch away, retreating into the safety of the doorway. I didn't move. I wouldn't let him see me hesitate. Ethan. I forced his name out evenly, my voice void of the shaking that threatened to take over my body. Didn't expect to see you here either. A slow, calculated smile tugged at his lips. Well, you know me. Always full of surprises. The way he said it made my stomach turn. This was a warning. A message. He was reminding me that he had been one step ahead this entire time. I had no idea how much he had seen. If he had heard Olivia's confession, if he had been watching the entire time, waiting for the perfect moment to make his move. I needed to be careful. I swallowed down the bile rising in my throat and lifted my chin. What do you want? Ethan tilted his head as if the question genuinely amused him. I think you know the answer to that. The weight of his words settled between us, thick and suffocating. I needed to act fast. I was just catching up with Olivia, I said, keeping my tone light, almost casual. It's funny actually. We had a lot to talk about. Ethan's jaw tightened. A small reaction, but I caught it. He didn't like that. Good. Olivia let out a nervous breath, shifting behind me. I think you should go, Ethan. Ethan didn't even glance at her. His gaze remained locked on mine, assessing, calculating. Is that what you think, Sarah? My heart pounded. My fingers twitched at my sides, but I kept them still. If I played this wrong, if I let him see the fear threatening to consume me, I was done. I forced myself to smile. I think we have unfinished business. Ethan's eyes darkened, but there was something else behind them now. Amusement. He thought he still had the upper hand. Let him believe it. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Olivia sucked in a sharp breath behind me, but I ignored her. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about me. I was done being afraid. Ethan's lips twitched as if he were barely holding back a smirk. You sure you want to do this here? I tilted my head, mirroring his casual stance. Would you rather do it somewhere else? His expression shifted slightly. A flicker of hesitation. He hadn't expected me to push back. I held his gaze, steady and unwavering. I needed him to believe I wasn't a threat. That I wasn't looking for revenge. That I was willing to play along. Finally, he let out a breathy chuckle, shaking his head. You always were stubborn. I forced a smile. And you always were predictable. A flash of something crossed his face. Something unreadable, something dangerous, but it was gone before I could place it. He studied me for another long moment before finally nodding. Let's go home. I knew what he was doing. He wanted to get me alone. But that was fine. Because now I wanted the same thing. The drive back to the house was suffocatingly silent. Ethan kept his hands steady on the wheel, his posture relaxed. To an outsider he looked like a husband simply driving his wife home. But I knew better. He was thinking. Calculating. So was I. I glanced at my reflection in the window. My face was calm, unreadable. But beneath the surface my mind was moving a mile a minute. Ethan had spent weeks crafting his perfect lie, making the world believe he was a grieving husband. But he had made one mistake. He had underestimated me. He thought I would run. He thought I would break. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was going to end this. And I was going to make sure he never saw it coming. When we pulled into the driveway, Ethan cut the engine but didn't move. For a moment we sat in silence, the tension thick between us. Then he turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You never told me," he said quietly. I kept my face neutral. "Told you what?" His fingers tapped against the steering wheel. "How you got back." A slow, sharp smile curved my lips. "Some things are better left a mystery." Ethan exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "You always did love playing games." I met his gaze. "Only when I know I'm going to win." A flicker of something crossed his face. A warning. Then, without another word, he opened his door and stepped out. I followed, my pulse steady, my hands relaxed at my sides. I was walking into a cage with a monster. But what he didn't know. I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the hunter. The front door clicked shut behind us, sealing me in. Ethan walked ahead without a word, his posture relaxed but his movements precise, controlled. The air inside the house felt thicker than before, pressing down on me as if the walls themselves were bracing for what was coming. I followed him into the kitchen, every step deliberate. My heartbeat was steady, my breath controlled. I had spent too much time reacting, too much time being caught off guard. Not anymore. This time I was the one in control. Ethan pulled out a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet, poured himself a glass and took a slow sip. His eyes met mine over the rim. "You've changed," he murmured. I tilted my head, studying him. "Did you expect me to be the same?" His lips curved slightly, but it wasn't a smile. "No," he admitted. "I expected you to be broken." I let the words settle between us, let him think they would rattle me. But they didn't. They only confirmed what I already knew. He had never expected me to return. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You spent weeks crying on TV, convincing everyone you were devastated. But the second you saw me walk into that police station..." I let my voice drop, my eyes narrowing. "You weren't relieved, Ethan. You were terrified." His fingers tensed around the glass. For a brief second his carefully crafted facade flickered and I caught it, that sharp edge of panic, the crack in his mask. He wasn't as composed as he wanted me to believe. I pressed forward. "Why don't you tell me why?" Ethan exhaled, setting his glass down with a soft clink. "You don't want to play this game with me, Sarah." I pushed off the counter, closing the space between us. "Oh, but I do." A slow, dangerous silence stretched between us. I could see the battle in his eyes, the calculation, the weighing of risks. He was deciding how much to reveal, how much he could still manipulate. I smiled. "I already know about the insurance money. About Olivia. About the death certificate." His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. I tilted my head. "You thought I'd disappear forever, didn't you?" Still he said nothing. So I took another step forward, lowering my voice to a whisper. "Or were you planning to make sure I did?" There was the flicker of rage, the slight flare of his nostrils, the tension in his jaw. Ethan had always been good at hiding his emotions. But I knew him too well. I had just pushed the right button. He sighed, shaking his head. "You think you're clever, Sarah. But you don't have proof." He was trying to turn it around, to make me doubt myself. But I didn't need proof. I only needed to make him think I had it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. His eyes followed the movement, his expression sharpening. I tapped the screen, playing back the recording. "Ethan isn't who you think he is. I think you were never supposed to come back. He's dangerous, Sarah." The color drained from his face. It was Olivia's voice. The recording I had secretly taken while she spoke to me outside her townhouse. I had caught her confession. And now so had he. Ethan's lips parted slightly before he forced them shut. His eyes flickered toward the front door. Calculating, considering. He was running through every option in his mind. I let him. I let him sit with the weight of it, let him feel the tightening noose around his throat. Finally, he let out a slow breath. When he looked back at me, something in his expression had changed. The performance was gone. The mask had shattered. And in its place was the man he had been hiding all along. A man without remorse. A man who had planned my disappearance like it was a business transaction. A man who wasn't afraid of being caught, because he still thought he could get away with it. You think that recording is enough? His voice was eerily calm. It's not a confession. It's speculation. I arched a brow. Maybe. I took another step closer, closing the space between us completely. I could feel his breath now, sharp and controlled. But imagine how it'll sound when I hand it over to the police. Along with your death certificate for me. His eyes darkened. That's enough to open an investigation, I continued, my voice soft but sharp. Enough to make people start asking questions. Ethan's fingers flexed at his sides. For the first time I saw it. Fear. Not because I had proof, but because I had leverage. I smiled. So tell me, Ethan. Do you still think I'm broken? His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Because he knew the truth. I wasn't broken. I was the one holding the knife now. And I had just decided where to strike. Ethan didn't say a word as I turned and walked toward the hallway. My heartbeat pounded against my ribs, but I kept my pace steady. I could feel his eyes burning into my back, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of looking over my shoulder. I had won this round. But the game wasn't over yet. I reached my bedroom, the one that no longer felt like mine, and shut the door behind me, locking it with a quiet click. I leaned against the wood, exhaling slowly. I needed to think. I had rattled him. That much was clear. But Ethan was dangerous when cornered. He wasn't going to let me walk away that easily. Which meant I had to act first. I pulled out my phone, staring at Olivia's contact. My fingers hovered over the screen. Could I trust her? Maybe. Maybe not. But I wasn't going to do this alone. Not anymore. I hit the call button. The phone rang once. Twice. Then, Sarah. Olivia's voice was hushed, anxious. I took a deep breath. We need to finish what we started. Pause. Then a slow exhale. Tell me what to do. Olivia's breath was shaky through the phone. Tell me what to do. I gripped the device tighter, my heartbeat loud in my ears. I had expected hesitation, doubt. But her voice was steady, determined. Ethan thinks he's untouchable, I murmured, pacing the small space of the bedroom. We need to make him understand he's not. Pause. Then Olivia whispered, how? I exhaled. We hit him where it hurts. There was silence on the line, but I knew she was listening. He built his perfect story, I continued. The grieving husband. The heartbroken man who lost the love of his life. I stopped, staring at my reflection in the dark window. We're going to burn that lie to the ground. Olivia sucked in a breath. You mean, expose him? Yes. She hesitated. He'll fight back. I'm counting on it. Because I had learned something in the past few hours. Ethan didn't just enjoy control, he needed it. He thrived on the idea that he was always one step ahead. That was his weakness. He underestimated people. He underestimated me. I wasn't broken. I wasn't running. I was about to ruin him. I barely slept that night. I stayed locked in the bedroom, my mind running through every possibility, every reaction Ethan might have, every move he might make. I had to stay ahead. By morning, the house was silent. Too silent. I stepped into the hallway, bracing myself, but Ethan was nowhere to be seen. His car was gone. He was planning something. Good. So was I. I grabbed my bag and left. Olivia was already waiting when I arrived. She looked different. The nervous energy she carried before had settled into something sharper. She was ready. You're sure about this? She asked. I nodded. It's time. We sat in her car, going over the plan one last time. Every detail mattered. Ethan had spent weeks building his lie, manipulating the narrative. But we had something he didn't. The truth. It wasn't just the recording. It wasn't just the death certificate. It was everything. His behavior. His rushed decisions. The money trail that led directly to him. And soon everyone would see it. Olivia exhaled. What happens after? I turned to her, my expression unreadable. After. I repeated. She nodded. Once he's exposed. Once the world knows. I thought about it. Thought about the years I spent loving a man who had planned my erasure. Thought about the way he had looked at me when I walked back into that police station, not with relief but with fear. I walk away, I said simply. And I don't look back. The first call went to the police. Olivia gave her statement, detailing everything she knew, what Ethan had told her, how he had convinced her to stay quiet. How she had realized too late what he was capable of. The second call went to a reporter. The same reporter who had broadcasted Ethan's grief, his desperate pleas for my return. I told her I had a better story. She listened. And then I sent her everything. The death certificate. The insurance documents. The recording. She called me back within minutes. How soon can you meet? The news broke within hours. Headlines spread like wildfire. Husband who begged for missing wife's return accused of faking her death. Grieving husband or master manipulator? Shocking new evidence. Was Sarah Lawson's disappearance planned? I sat in Olivia's living room watching it unfold. Watching the world finally see Ethan for who he really was. The perfect husband. The grieving man. The liar. The fraud. The man who had tried to erase his own wife. Ethan called. I let it go to voicemail. Then he called again. And again. By the sixth call he stopped. I stared at my phone, fingers hovering over the screen. I could call him back. Confront him. Ask him why. But I already knew the answer. He did it because he could. Because he thought he'd get away with it. Because I had been nothing more than an inconvenience to him. Not anymore. I deleted the missed calls. And then I turned off my phone. By evening, the police were at Ethan's house. I watched the footage on TV. Officers surrounding the property, reporters shouting questions. Ethan stepped outside, his face pale, his jaw clenched. For the first time there were no tears. No act. He was caught. He knew it. I watched as he was led to the squad car, cameras flashing in his face. The same cameras that had once captured his grief were now capturing his downfall. Poetic. Fitting. The last image I saw before shutting the TV off was his face. Not angry. Not pleading. Just empty. Because he knew. I had won. I packed that night. Not much. Just what I needed. Olivia sat on the bed watching me. Where will you go? I zipped up the bag. Anywhere but here. She hesitated. You could stay. Start over. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I already have. She nodded, understanding. I had spent years being Sarah Lawson, Ethan's wife. That woman was gone. It was time to figure out who I was without him. The morning air was crisp as I stepped outside, my bag slung over my shoulder. Olivia stood at the door watching me go. If you ever need anything. I nodded. I know. We weren't friends. Not really. But we had survived something together. That was enough. I walked toward the cab waiting at the curb. As I climbed inside, I took one last look at the place I had once called home. I didn't feel sadness. Or anger. Or loss. Just freedom. The cab pulled away and I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for years. Ethan had spent so much time trying to control my ending. But in the end, he hadn't written my final chapter. I had. And it started now. I never thought I would survive, but surviving wasn't enough. I took back control. I exposed the truth. And in the end I walked away without looking back. Ethan thought he could write my story, but he never realized that the final chapter would be mine to tell. If this story resonated with you, share it. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's setting yourself free.